Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson, senior editor for Gold Derby, and I'm here with Jack Lowden, who plays River Cartwright in the Apple TV Plus series Slow Horses. Right off the top, Jack, I'm just curious, what was your favorite part about playing this sort of disgraced British intelligence officer who's sent to the Slough House? What drew you in about this character?
Probably what the first word that you used there, because he's disgraced. I think, a lot of these kind of things are made in the world of espionage. We see them quite often. But the fact that if you prefix it with disgraced or rubbish or, embarrassing, I think it was a sort of no-brainer, really, where once I got the part, because to do that in a world as cool as espionage, but to be considered crap at your job or have made some horrific mistake is quite fun. So really that was the main thing story-wise. Yeah.
I myself, I wasn't really familiar with the books before I watched the series, so I wasn't sure what to expect. So that first scene where it's like a total action thriller. It's very James Bond, Jason Bourne. But as the series progresses, it's a lot more than that. It's also drama and comedy. So how familiar with the books were you before you went into it? And then what was the most interesting aspect of the script for you?
So I wasn't familiar with them at all. But as soon as I got involved in the project, it was fairly evidently obvious how massive a following that those books have, and with Mick, and you can see why. And then with the scripts, they just had my sense of humor. It's the first time I've read something in ages that had my sense of humor. It doesn't take itself very seriously at all, and constantly every situation they're trying to undercut it. The writer is trying to undercut it in some way, which is probably normally through Jackson Lamb, through Gary's character. But I also love the fact that River is sort of like the straight man, so to speak, to his funny man. And so it's always twice as funny to me when you imagine such a miserable bloke like River stood next to such a disgrace as Jackson Lamb, and he's basically just one big eye roll through the whole thing, which is very difficult to play because it's very hard not to laugh. Yeah.
Let's talk about Gary Oldman, who plays Jackson Lamb. I'm curious, did he sign on to this before you or after you? Like, was he a surprise, or did you go in knowing I'm about to be able to work with Gary Oldman on this project? And how exciting was that?
Oh no, he was I think probably the first name on the team sheet, and as soon as read the scripts first and then found out it was Gary, just went for it like hell, because he's also never done TV.
Yeah.
Or if he's done it, maybe did it like back in the 70s or whenever. I don't know, but he's never done TV, so I think it was quite a stamp of approval if Gary had decided to do TV, is how much he believed in this project. So getting to just be on a set with him in a sort of like competition winner kind of way would have been enough. But to get to be opposite him was sort of ridiculous, and still is. Yeah.
What was it like acting with him? Like, was it very serious? Were you breaking character? Because he's hilarious in the show. What was that like?
It wasn't serious at all. I think the nature of the piece is that it shouldn't be serious, and I think it doesn't work unless we're having fun. It doesn't look like River's having fun, but that makes it even more fun, is trying to make it look like he's miserable. But I mean, some days there's a line where in one of the first scenes I have with Gary, where Lamb has to laugh. I suggest I'll go and do something, and he finds that funny, the idea, the notion of a loser like me doing something. And we obviously in filming, you've done it 25 times. And Gary came up to me and said, when we do this again, can you do a stupid face or something on that line behind the camera so that I can laugh organically? And so I would be doing this scene and I would just like cross my eyes and Gary would piss himself laughing. And so it was really refreshing to see a legend like him working that kind of from shooting from the hip kind of way. It was quite cool.
Is it fun for you to be not just working with him, but I mean, you're someone with a theater background. So is it fun for you to play with a lot of these other actors? I mean, it's a pretty great ensemble. You have a lot of scenes with Olivia Cook. Of course, Kristen Scott Thomas is part of the cast, another legend. And then Jonathan Pryce, who you only have a couple scenes with, but I mean, he's amazing. So what's it like just to be a part of that sort of an ensemble?
I mean, it's amazing. And most of the people that you mentioned there as well, they have a huge theatre pedigree. Gary spent the beginning of his career years and years and years on stage up in Glasgow, near where I'm from in Scotland. I've been in a play opposite Kristen. I played Kristen's long lost brother in Electra, the Greek tragedy. I don't know how we got away with me and her being brother and sister, but he was long lost, so it's fine. And Jonathan Pryce is a sort of legend, another legend of the stage. So they have what that does. It imbues actors with a real a grounding in being prepared. They're so prepared, and that comes from theatre. So there's no time wasted really. They all turn up. It sounds ridiculous, but they all turn up knowing their lines. Amount of actors that don't do that, and they have a sense of humor. They take the work seriously, but they don't take themselves seriously at all. So it's a great working atmosphere. Yeah.
And getting back into the characters, Jackson is tough on River. River sort of thinks he's hot stuff. He's a little cocky. Do you think Jackson is hard on him because he doesn't like him personally, or does he perhaps remind him of himself a little and he wants to take him down a peg?
I'd like to say he doesn't. It's part of it's because he doesn't like him because he's tall and blonde, and it's like a complete mess. Even more of a mess in the books. Gary makes him look like Tom Cruise compared to what's actually written in the books, but he's still pretty revolting. What they've done to Gary is amazing. But I think a large part of it is to do with that there's a chip on his shoulder because my grandfather, Jonathan Pryce, was the head of the service. So there's maybe a bit of nepotism, which I think just probably happens in that industry, in the army, in our industry. It happens quite a lot. But I do think he has a begrudging respect for him in that way, that like a tutor, in a sort of lighter Whiplash kind of way, where he knows that he's good enough, but he just will never ever tell him that so that he can get better. And I don't actually know what River would do if Lamb turned around and said, "Well done." I think he'd probably faint or go to the toilet and have a cry. One of those two. But I think there's a part of him that likes him. Yeah.
Is it fun for you to be able to get to be part of those action sequences as well? Like that opening airport scene where you're running, or the last scene. I mean, it's a lot of cardio. How much do you get to do? How much do you have to turn over to stunt doubles, or are you able to do most of it?
So all of that, I'm very proud to say that all of that opening sequence was all me. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily because I'm sort of unbelievably athletic. It's more to do with the fact that whilst it was incredibly exciting, I'm not like diving off any buildings or anything like that. So there's nothing too dangerous. But the driving, like when he commandeers a car and drives all through the tarmac and stuff, that's me. And I said to the director, to James, I said, it's going to be annoying because nobody's going to believe that's me in the car because you can't see it. You just see a car. But I do like to drive. So that's half the reason I wanted that job, was that I knew he gets to drive quite a lot. I mean, they're ridiculously exciting to do those things. And we had a whole runway, we had a whole airport terminal, to play around in. So what's not like, yeah.
And we don't get a ton of access in America to a lot of British shows. And I think that's one of the great things about streamers, and what they've done is brought, international television to various countries. Has that been new for you? Like, have you experienced, more reception from all over the world to this show than you might have with other projects?
I mean, I was over in LA recently with Gary for a Q&A and stuff. And so it was a bit mad to see it up everywhere and people talking about it and coming over and saying well done and stuff in America. That was a bit strange, but I think it's probably been going on a bit longer than that. So, you know, a few of the TV things that I've done have traveled to America, and I think it's wonderful, and it's really interesting to get the sort of the American viewpoint on something that's very, very, very British. This incredibly British. So it's quite funny to get the American view on it. Yeah.
And you've been acting professionally for a good while now, but I'm just curious, as we're an awards website, what was the first big awards show that you attended, and what's, you know, a memory that stands out for you from that night?
I think the first one I ever attended was the Olivier Awards in London.
Okay.
For a stage, because I was nominated for one, and I won it in the end, which was still a bit mental. And it was in the Royal Opera House in London. And I was only like 22, 23, and there was all this sort of London sort of stage acting royalty. It was just madness. And I remember sat there thinking, okay, if you do win, you've got to say something funny. And then I think I sort of practiced, I can't remember what I said now, but I do remember winning, but being so shocked that I won, that I was up there, and what I'd planned to say as being quite funny, I completely bungled it, and it was just not funny at all and didn't make any sense. I remember that feeling, but it's that was probably the first one, and it was a big one to be the first one. It was a bit daunting, yeah.
And you know, we've seen the trailer for season 2 is out, so I imagine a release date coming soon for that. Was that fun to shoot? Are there teases that you can share with us, or what was that experience like to continue forward with this story?
Well, we shot that right on the back of the first 6. We didn't really stop, to be honest, and I think it's evident from the trailer that, I mean, the first season was shot, felt like over one continuous freezing cold night in London, whereas this one is a lot more summery because we started shooting it in the summer. And it's very, very different in terms of the people that it follows, what it deals with. I think it's better than the first season already, just because it will be, because we found we the more comfortable everybody started to feel in the characters. I think with anything, it can only go up. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. So I think it'll be really interesting. I think it'll be very funny, particularly from River's point of view. The situations that River gets into is quite funny. It's quite ridiculous. But I think it was announced literally today that season 3 and 4 have been commissioned. So we're doing it again. Yeah, so that's a really lovely thing to hear. Right.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to that. And Jack, congratulations on Slow Horses. Best of luck to you and the entire cast and crew at this year's Emmys. It's such a fun, incredibly acted show, and our viewers can head over to goldderby.com, make your award predictions, and check out more interviews with top contenders, including Jack's co-star Gary Oldman. See what he had to say about Jack. That's a fun interview to watch. And thank you so much for taking time to chat with Gold Derby today.
No worries. Thank you.